We're going to get analysis on all of this now with Greg Stoker in Austin, Texas. He's a military and geopolitical analyst at Mint Press News. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Firstly, there's much talk about Israel responding to Iran in retaliation for Tuesday. Do you think Israel will respond? And if they do, what could it look like?
Well, first of all, the overarching strategic picture is they're fighting an action in Gaza. They're fighting a multi-brigade action in West Bank called Operation Summer Camps. And now they are trying to do a massive push into southern Lebanon to roll Hezbollah back, presumably to the Litani River. You could easily argue that they don't have the military infrastructure and command architecture to sustain these three ongoing attrition operations. And can they open up another front with Iran? They're already having recruitment issues where they're having to draft the Haredis, which have historically been protected. Now they're offering citizenship to Africans in exchange for IDF service. They're low on munitions. They're propped up by our funding and our political cover. I'm speaking as from the United States perspective, and they might actually respond. We don't know what that looks like. There is some threats, some saber rattling about striking nuclear sites within Iran. They couldn't get all of them. And then Iran would have to respond. And that might drag the U.S. into it. U.S. bases are incredibly vulnerable. U.S. oil assets in the Middle East are incredibly vulnerable. And I imagine there's a lot of backdoor pressure trying to force Israel not to respond.
Is that, though, ultimately what Israel is trying to do, is to get the U.S. involved so they will help them fight Iran, because the U.S. is already sending more forces to the Middle East. And if they send even more, could this be something that Israel sees as, well, we have American backing and American military backing to help us to expand this war, and then to drag, of course, the UN in, and then possibly even more Western countries?
Well, first of all, it's no secret that Netanyahu's political fever dream has always been to get the United States to bomb Iran on behalf of Israel. He said in multiple statements in so many words and implied that throughout his political career. However, I do want to make one thing clear about the troops going to the Middle East. They are not combat troops yet. So I track all the United States troop deployments because that really tells us what the Pentagon has planned. So no deployment orders for any active duty combat units like a Marine expeditionary force or like an airborne division from the U.S. Army are going over. There's support personnel to support an extra couple fighter wings, F-22s, F-16s, that are going to be stationed in the Gulf to increase U.S. air power. But we're not seeing any ground troops yet, and that's a good sign to me. Now, will the U.S. target Iranian sites on behalf of Israel in order to protect them from any sort of Iranian reprisals? We've seen since this conflict began that both Iran and the United States do not want a war with each other. Iran's on an upswing economically. They want a better nuclear deal, better relations with the United States, and they want a relief of sanctions. Likewise, the U.S. is trying to do a geostrategic shift to East Asia to deal with China from their perspective, and they don't want to get bogged down in another forever war in West Asia.
What about Iran itself? I mean, they are warning of a bigger, more powerful response if Israel does something. From what you know about Iran's military, its weapon supplies, how would it fare? Is it able to fare well in an all-out war, if that is the correct term to use in this respect?
Well, it's notable from the strike the other night, they shot about 200 missiles, and there were multiple impacts on Israeli military sites. They have a media blackout on it, but through satellite imagery, we could see that Netzavim Air Force Base was hit, and that was just a tiny, tiny fraction of their arsenal. The big question is, can Iran put that many rockets in the air targeting Israel, and by extension, potentially, in a worst-case scenario, U.S. military bases in the region, while getting actively bombed by the United States and Israel? Could they keep up that sustained rate of fire, wave after wave of rockets? Because the rocket arsenal is the biggest deterrent they have. And I think the success of their strike the other night was basically just to show everybody who's looking, who knows what to look for, that they can penetrate the Iron Dome, their air defense artillery system, target military assets, and then it still gave Israel a opportunity to de-escalate by telling all the citizens and their outlets in the Western legacy media that the attack failed. It was unsuccessful. Look how backwards Iran is. So they do have an off-ramp. They could just do a massive propaganda push and hopefully not respond. That is the best case scenario.
And remains to be seen what will actually play out. Greg Stoker, really good to get your take and analysis. Thank you very much.
Thank you.